Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be doing some overkill 3D-ness in stuff and everything. Let's face it, we've got a pair of GTX690s from EVGA on the test bench. £800 at least for the card, so we're talking like a minimum of 1,600 Great British pounds for these two graphics cards. Now, I want to say something right at the very beginning, although I am going to be doing it in the conclusion. Quad SLI, quad fire, everything like that, it's really about benchmarks or EP-ness, because putting four cards together like this, since they've started doing these dual cards, putting two of them together, it's always really been about benchmarks more than everything else. Some games will play worse with two 690s than they will with one 690. The benchmarks do kind of utilise it all better, but you will always run into problems. Sometimes it's the games, sometimes it's the drivers. There's never a conclusive answer that you can give for the whole of it. So what we're doing with this, it's why it's overkill 3D, because it is humongous overkill, and we're only going to be running it on a single 24-inch screen. But it's just to show you what you can do if you want to. But we'll wrap it all up and do a lot of bit of, chit-chatting at the end, explain some good things, explain some bad things, and kind of just go from there. But anyway, I'm going to shush my mouth. I want to give you a good look at the rig, because I know you're all dying to get some, to get a decent gawp at it. So I'm going to grab my remote, and you're not going to see me again for a good while. Right then peeps, a quick look at the bench rig. So, basis of the build is, or build test rig, well yeah anyway, it's Rampage 4 Extreme. We've got a 3960X in there running at 4.6 gigahertz. Cooling is a Corsair H100. Got the Corsair SP120 fans on there. They're actually the performance editions with the fan speed reducer on. And I can confirm that they are louder than the quiet editions on full speed, which is why they didn't make it into my personal rig. But this is quite warm, so I'm running those, and I've got the fan speed reducer on just to keep the noise down a little bit. They are louder than the quiet editions as well. Other than that, obviously, the order of the day are the EVGA 690s, and we have a pair of those little beauties in. Although for 600 series cards, they're definitely not small. That is at the very edge of a E-ATX motherboard there, so they are not the smallest of cards, but then we wouldn't expect it considering they've basically got two cores on each. Power is being delivered by a Corsair AX 1200 watt with the blue individually braided cables. And then we also have 16 gigabyte of Corsair Dominator Platinum. It's those little lighty up beauties, as you can see. They're all lit up, they're all sexy and lovely. Now, so we've had a look at that. All of the stuff is going to be done today on a 1920 by 1080 screen. All the games will be completely maxed out when we get that far. But really what I want to do is take the camera off, old school, and have a look at the actual bench rig. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it around this way. Dum dum dum, give me a second. And that is how you fix a noisy H100. Right. So what I wanted to do was have a look at the 690s in there properly, because although we've got the individual video, they do look the absolute gonads. I really, really like the look of these cards. If we go down slowly, they really, really do look the part. I properly love the design on these. I can't really say enough about how much I like the way they look. But yeah, that is the bench rig today. Hard drive, we're using at the moment a Corsair GS240. But that is it. Yes, we are using a lot of Corsair stuff, but who wouldn't given the choice? And just to make it very clear, because a lot of people, or one person in particular I should say, said, oh, he's being forced to use it. I'm not being forced to use anything. I can use whatever I like. It's just I've chosen this config. So yes, if you don't like it, no. Anyways, right, let's move on and have a look at some benchmarks. We're going to do some 3D Mark stuff, we're going to do a bit of gaming stuff, and then we'll get stuff all wrapped up at the very end. Right then peeps, strangely we're going to start with Vantage. Normally it would be 3D11, but we're going to do Vantage this time. Now I've got MSI Afterburner running in the background for the on-screen display. People always ask. People also ask why I don't use something like Fraps to just screenshot and video the actual screen rather than using the camera. Well, Fraps will always lag and set the frames per second to drop right down, so you don't get a true kind of gauge of performance or anything like that in the video. And obviously the whole point in us is to have the on-screen display so we can see what the frames per second are, which is why we have to use a camera, video it in the monitor, because it's the best way to do it. Anyway, I'm going to get 3D Mark Vantage going. Literally just click run, no changes. But like I said, I've got Afterburner running in the background, so we'll get a nice on-screen display to have a look at the pair of the cards. We'll do it this way, do a whole run through, and I'll do the X score and just show you the results. Obviously this one, we've got to let it warm up. So, right, at the top, first of all, frames per second, then we got the first card, temperature, percentage of GPU usage, percentage fan usage, temperature, GPU usage, fan usage, and then we've got memory usage for both of them as well. So yeah, right at the very beginning I will say it's Afterburner. If you can't get it working, then go back to noob school, because you just need to have a play about with it and literally enable and disable the bits that you want it to display. So it's nearly there and we're going to get cracking. There we go. It's really warm in this room today as well, I might add. I should have got the thermometer out, but it's still in a box in the corner from when I packed everything up the other week. So I'm literally just going to let you watch that go through. If you don't like it, you can skip it, it's fine. Vantage is actually still one of the best benchmarks for testing your GPU stability with an overclock. There are a lot of times with a GPU overclock that most of the tests will pass, but you put Vantage on and Vantage will fail, especially with when you're really pushing the overclocks. Vantage generally does get unstable at a much lower level than some of the other benchmarks. So generally a good rule of thumb is if you can get Vantage to be 100% stable with your GPU overclock, you shouldn't get any problems anywhere else. Another little tidbit for you there anyway. Right then, she's finished. And we have an overall score there of 58,901. We've got a CPU score of 46,628 and a GPU score of 64,565. What I'm going to do now is stop the camera, going to rerun the test, but we're going to do it in extreme mode, and then I'll show you the two scores side by side. Right then peeps, on the left side we've got the P score that we tested just a minute ago. On the right hand side we have the X score, which we've just done. So we've got 58,901 versus 49,755. And then for the GPU scores we've got a 64,565 against a 49,909. And then CPU scores, one's 46,500, one's 47,000. One of the things that we can see is that the X score hasn't made so much, you know, a massive drop. Generally, when you run the X's, you have a much bigger drop than you would with that. I mean, you're only really looking there at about 10,000 points. And what we can take away from that, especially when you look at the GPU scores as well, there's about 15,000 between them. It's really basically the P score. I don't like using the word bottleneck, but the only way we could really have got that P score up on the left hand side would have been a much bigger overclock on the CPU, and the scores of the GPUs would have gone up with it. So although you've got an immense performance there, you are hitting with those 4 graphics cards, because obviously we're talking four individual cores. You are hitting the limits of the CPU there. So it's a bottleneck, but not in the kind of terms, you know, when we sort of start talking like really, you know, low end CPUs. It's just because there's so much graphics power there. And that's why with the X score, because you're on an X run and it's being stressed out much more, the score's not being so limited, because it's obviously having to do a lot more. So that's kind of the reason why anyway. But what we're going to do now, so we've done the Vantage score, you've had a chance to see and have a look at that. Now we're going to move on and have a look at the 3D Mark 11 results, and I will put the P and the X scores side by side with those for you as well. Right then, 3D Mark 11. Left hand side, 20,414 points. If any of you have used 3D Mark 11, you'll realise how monstrous that score is. The X score is where we generally, you know, we're used to seeing that would be a good single card result on the X score for a P. So the fact that we've got a 10,842 for an X score is monstrous. One of the things I will say with these results, looking at these results, it's actually the cards are really they do really well, but the scaling isn't quite there. Whether that's a driver thing, or again we could be hitting the limitations of the CPU, but a 3960X at 4.6 gigahertz isn't a shy CPU. It's a bit of a difficult one really, but generally, as I'll say a lot in the conclusion, and I'll probably end up saying it a lot, the 4 cards like this are really only any good for benchmarking. But we'll move on now, and we're going to go and I'll let you watch a whole run through of Unigine. Actually no, we won't do a run through of Unigine, we'll just look at a quick Unigine result. Right then, on to Heaven. All I've done is open Heaven, clicked run, that's it. We've made no changes to it whatsoever, because it's the easiest way for us to be able to compare between all the different rigs. So frames per second, 203.1, total score of 5,116, minimum frames per second 70, maximum frames per second 390. As you can see, we've got all the settings there underneath, but as I've said to you before, it's just a click and run situation. It's just the easiest way really to get it. Obviously we can turn it up, but then it's difficult. We have to run all the other cards at those settings as well, and it just gets massively confusing. But as ever, you've only got to click the link underneath and you can go to the main review and see all the games, all the graphs and all that kind of stuff anyway. But talking of games, I think it's time for me to play some games badly. Right then, my lovelies, first of the games is Crysis 2. I've got it in the kind of like the escape kind of pause menu at the moment. Just to kind of reiterate these settings up here, you can just about see the mouse going across the top of the screen. That's obviously the frames per second, and we've got the GPU 1, GPU 2. You can see the temperatures of the cards, percentage of the usage of the cards here, and then fan percentage on this side, and then obviously GPU memory usage here. As we go in, if these two swap around, then I apologise, we'll try it quickly now, see which one goes up, and just because of that, none of them are. Now, I don't profess to be any kind of expert with these games, to the point of the reason why Mr. Strawberry used to play them was because I am absolutely horrific at playing these types of games. And I know I should run about more and all that kind of stuff. It's just not my type of thing with these sort of games. So I will try my best. But the idea is rather than commenting on how bad I am and the fact that I can never find the alien or I die, is just look at the frames per second. Uh-oh, I'm going to die. I am going to die. Because I can't remember how to change the weapons. Oh, we got a big gun. And I still did. Oh, I did get it. Oh, okay. That was a bit easier. Remember that for next time, Tom. Use the massive, massive gun. Oh, I see, we're out of ammo. Okay, right. Did I actually get it? I think I must have done. Anyway, we've not really done much talking about the frames per second. It's ticking around the 100 frames per second mark. This is obviously Crysis 2, absolutely maxed out. And by maxed out, I mean we've turned everything up to the most that we possibly can do. 1920 by 1080, high resolution this, super texture pack that. Do you know what I mean? We've done everything. I need to remember that next time as well. Woohoo! Gun's full. It's a bit late now though, isn't it? Wonder if it'll let me pick that other big bada boom gun up again. Anyway, we don't need to watch me running around doing this really badly. And my phone's just started ringing. So, we'll end this one here. Right then, on to Dirt 3. This really does not stress the system at all, but I just wanted to show you. But one of the things that you also need to realise with this game is, even though we're not exactly being... Don't forget, I'm sat on the floor trying to play this. Even though it doesn't exactly stress the game doesn't necessarily use the full potential of the cards either. Oh, hey! Don't forget, I'm trying to play this with one hand on a keyboard. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. But yeah, it's the game. You can play triple screens on this with like one card normally, one decent card, 7970, 680. It's just one of those things that's, at the same time, it doesn't, just because you're adding loads more cores in doesn't mean the frames per second is going to go up through the roof. And we've got the game absolutely maxed out as it is, and it's still hardly touching the cards. But I just wanted to show you a small section of the gameplay so you can get a rough idea. I doubt very much that anyone that really wants to buy 2 of these cards is going to be using it just for dirt free anyway. But I'm not going to bore you with any more of me playing like this, because I'm starting to get cramp in my hand because of the way I'm sat. So let's move on and take a look at some Metro footage. Right then, so moving on to Metro, it's the same level that we always play. Oh, that's me smashing the tripod. There we go. I can hardly see anything, by the way, because of the angle that I'm sat at, so this could be quite funny. Oh, I can see when he lights up. Come on, smash the E button. Yeah, look, the memory being used isn't really moving, but 170 frames a second for Metro is pretty epic. I mean, it's not really dropped below 100 frames yet, as I say it does. Right, where is he? Did we get him? Yeah, I think we did. I really can't see very well. Beep, bada, boom. Is he still there? Oh no, there's another one, Reload. Oh, there's another one. Cannot see for toffee. Right, well, we never get this one. This is always the place where we leave it off. So it's time to go. Hey, conclusion. Nice one, you got here. So, conclusion. What is there really that you can say about the 690s? At the present moment in time, it's probably, as far as 2 cards go, it's probably the fastest configuration that you're going to be able to get to put into your rig. But as we've already shown as well, sticking a pair of these beauties in, especially with some of the benchmarks, you are even going to be hitting the limitations of overclocked CPUs. It is ridiculous. I mean, if you are just looking for numbers for 3D Mark and stuff like that, see what you can do, then obviously this is going to be the way forward, well, the easiest way forward. One thing I will say with the dual 690s is the scaling isn't perfect, but it's definitely better than the 590s previously. They are getting there. They are getting better at refining these and getting them to talk to each other better. I think still there is a lot of work needs doing with the games, but let's face it, some of the tests that we've been doing recently, we've not seen any game differences between a 3770K and a 3930K or a 3960X, because the games still really aren't like heavily multi-threaded kind of ready. Some of them do utilise it a bit, but they're certainly not using all the power of the CPUs that are around at the moment. There aren't any games that are really crippling CPUs at this present moment in time. So with something like this, it is pretty much EPing. Even if I had this much money, would I, spend all that money on, 2 of these graphics cards? Not really, but the thing with it is it's about being able to say that you've got two graphics cards in. I would honestly say that if it was me, if you've only got a rig that's only really got one proper 16 times lane on it, and as soon as you start adding cards in, you start dropping down to like 8 times and stuff like that, then I probably would say, one of these would be a good idea. But I would personally, if it was me, be thinking I want a pair of 680s or something like that. Something they have also done with the 690s is when you look at the 580s from before, the 680s weren't that much quicker. Little bit, but not a humongous amount. But it was the power draw. They were much more efficient. So with the 690s versus the 590s, the power draw difference is ridiculous. Now, my readout is a bit fudged at the moment. When we kind of moved stuff around, it got knocked and it's not reading out properly. But I have been able to do it via a UPS. But it's bloody complicated, me trying to show you a UPS thing rather than just a wattage meter. And it's kind of difficult. Anyway, so was testing via a UPS, and honestly, this rig laid up like this, if it was 47970s in there, you'd be looking at it pulling between 1200 and 1300 watts. I've not seen this rig go much above 1000 watts. So we're talking two 690s in there, everything else running, and it's hardly gone above 1000 watts. 1000 watt power supply would be more than ample for this, which is why I've been saying to a lot of people recently when they're saying, I'm going to get, and they're like, a 680 and then their rig, and I must have 1000 watt power supply. It's like, no, you don't. You can run that on a 650 watt power supply and it'll be much more efficient as well. And so yeah, it's pretty much what I run my main rig with a 650. I will go up to probably a 750 when I stick 2 cards in. But it's just one of those things, you don't need to massively go over the top with your power supply. Unless within the next couple of months you're thinking about adding more stuff in, it's really not worth going massively over with your power supplies. You're better off buying the one that you need, and it will run better in the long run. So this, what would I say? If you're going to be running like massive screens and stuff, then fair enough, you may have the need for a pair of 690s. But I would say 99.99% of people out there would be better off getting a pair of decent cards, maybe with larger video RAM on them, and just overclocking their system and getting all the cooling and stuff and everything kind of configured right, rather than going down the route of going for this. We did do some triple screen testing, and they stressed the cards better, but the games that didn't really use the 4 cores with 1 screen didn't really use the 4 cores with 3 screens either. So it's basically you get a good idea with the single screen. It's all you get by adding the extra screens in is the card. The games that don't use it just run slower because you've put the other 2 screens on. So you can get a very good idea with the way that we've done it with this today. Total system specs for what we've got here, like I said, you're looking at, say, £1,500 conservatively for the graphics card, 750 quid conservatively for the CPU. So what are we looking at there? 2,000. You're easily looking at over £3,000 worth of kit for this. And I would hazard a guess that if you weren't looking at benchmark scores, taking off the graphics cards, sticking a pair of 680s on instead, you'd be better off, be quieter, cooler, draw less power, over and over again. But you can't get away from the fact that these things do, especially with the light up beams on these. I really like that. And the look of these cards are awesome. As I've talked about in the single 690 review, before when you had like a 590, it wasn't as good as 2 580s. Now with these, a single 690 is almost like, it's practically 680 SLI speeds. It's practically 7970 crossfire speeds. Just a smidge slower. If there was such a thing as a GTX695 it would be like 2 of those in SLI, because it's quicker than a 670 in SLI, but not quite as quick as a 680 in SLI. So they are very, very good. It's just the scaling when you start adding all those extra cards in. So as a single card, absolutely, do you know what I mean? It's brilliant. If you want just a single card solution, chuck it in. Obviously it's going to be, you're going to need the room, you're going to need a decent power supply to run it and all that kind of stuff, but being able to put it in and forget about it would be perfect. As a dual card solution, it's nothing against the cards themselves, it's nothing against the drivers, it's nothing really against the game specifically, it's just the same old thing. It's just, you know, this basically, testing these 2 cards together, I could practically have told you what they were going to be like, how they were going to perform, and what the drawbacks of them were going to be before I'd even taken them out of the box. And it is the same as as before. The good bits about it is it uses a bit less power, the scaling is a little bit better, and games and drivers are getting a little bit better as well. Maybe in another couple of generations time we'll get to the point where it's like, oh my god, everything's talking to everything properly. But until that time comes, it really is just a case of because you can, because you want to, or just because you've plain and simple lost your mind but got a huge credit card. But anyway, I hope you've liked that TTL insight into quad graphics card gaming, or at least quad core, because that's what we must remember. It's still, just because there's 2 cards, there's still 4 graphics cores there. But for now at least, in this crazy heat, and not necessarily just because of the graphics cards, but because it's gorgeously sunny outside, this is Tiny Tom Logan, that actually hasn't had any coffee or tea today, surprisingly, with another video for you. Out.